It is the personal responsibility of every shooter to know and use firearms safety rules. There is no second chance. For most people, their introduction to firearms is usually through a friend or relative who is already experienced with firearms, or by joining a shooting club. It is generally through this introduction that the basic safety rules are passed on. Treat every firearm as being loaded.
All you need to do is break it open.
Check it yourself. Ensure that the firearm is unloaded and that the action is open when carrying, accepting from, or passing the firearm to another person. Don't rely on someone else's assurance, and if you don't know how to check it, leave it alone. Always point firearms in a safe direction. Be muzzle conscious. That way, if something does go wrong, no harm can result. Never have loaded firearms in the car, home, or camp. Open the action, and if you can remove the bolt, do so. Ensure that all ammunition has been removed from all firearms. Remember, it is the firearm that is believed to be empty that kills. Identify your target and what is behind it. Color can be misleading, as can shape, noise, and movement. Bullets can travel a long way and remain dangerous. Never fire at hard surfaces or water. A ricochet will almost certainly result from shooting at smooth, flat surfaces, water, or rocks, in the same way as which a stone can be skipped across the surface of a pond. Bullets behave the same way, but are far more dangerous. Store ammunition and firearms separately. Under lock and key. It is also a good idea to keep the bolts, where applicable, locked safely away from the firearms. Do not climb fences or obstacles with loaded firearms. Unload, open the action, and pass the firearm safely. Ensure others do the same, and you won't get any unpleasant surprises. To effectively apply the safety rules, you need to have a sound knowledge of firearms and handling. To begin with, let's take a look at the terminology associated with the basic parts of a gun. The term lock, stock, and barrel derives from the components of a firearm. The lock, or action, as it is more commonly known, is the mechanism which fires the cartridge. It comprises the trigger, firing mechanism, a safety device, and often a magazine, which may be removable or fixed to the firearm. The stock is the means by which the gun is held. It comprises the butt and the forend. The barrel is the means of directing the projectile. The cartridge is presented at the breech. The fired projectile exits the barrel at the muzzle. The interior of the barrel comprises the chamber into which the cartridge is placed for firing, and the bore. Shotguns have smooth bores. Rifles have grooves or rifling cut in the bore to spin and stabilize the bullet. The diameter of the bore is described as the caliber of the firearm. Modern firearms, both rifles and shotguns, use a variation of the safety cartridge. It comprises a cartridge case which holds all components together, a projectile, either a shot charge or a bullet, propellant powder, and a primer. When the primer is struck by the firing pin, it creates a flash which ignites the propellant. The burning powder forms expanding gas which forces the bullet down the bore. It is therefore essential that your ammunition is correct for the firearm and that both are in good condition. Some older guns are not designed for modern cartridges. Attempting to fire an old gun or one in poor repair can have disastrous consequences. If in doubt, take your gun to a gunsmith. All modern firearms employ a 7-step cycle of operations. The order may vary slightly depending on the type of the firearm. This bolt-action rifle demonstrates the 7 steps. Feeding. A cartridge is placed in the chamber. Cocking. The firing pin or hammer spring is compressed and engaged by the trigger mechanism. Locking. The action locks to seal the cartridge in the chamber and contain the pressure generated on firing. Firing. The trigger is pressed to fire the action. Unlocking. The action is unlocked, breaking the seal at the chamber. Extraction. The empty cartridge case is withdrawn from the chamber. Ejection. The fired case is then ejected from the firearm. The cycle can now be repeated. The bolt action is generally confined to rifles, although some shotguns use this system. It is simple, reliable, and strong. With the bolt open, the action can be easily inspected. The bolt can be fully withdrawn for storage and transit and is a valuable safety feature. A break-action gun like this double-barrel shotgun is fed manually. Closing the action also locks it. It can now be fired. After firing, the action is unlocked and opened. This also recocks the action. Some shotguns have exposed hammers which can catch on clothing and vegetation, inadvertently cocking the gun. Break-action guns can be carried safely with rounds chambered, but the action open. The firearm is visibly safe, and when carried thus, is a reassuring courtesy to your companions. The semi-automatic action is probably the most sophisticated type. The force of the fired cartridge is used to cycle the action. With a .22, a straight blowback action is used. Other calibers use some of the burning propellant gas tapped off from the barrel to operate the action. To commence the cycle, the operator manipulates the cocking lever, withdrawing the breech block, cocking the action, and feeding a cartridge. As the cartridge is fired, some of the gas is used to operate a piston, which unlocks the breech block and forces it to the rear, extracting and ejecting the fired case. A new round is presented, and as the breech block is pushed forward by the return spring, the cycle commences again. These guns demand extreme care. Each time you pull the trigger, a live cartridge is chambered, and the gun is ready to fire again. Because of this feature, you may have to rely on the safety catch between shots when hunting. It is generally difficult to check the breech to see that it is clear. And the tube magazine is also difficult to check. Tube magazines, if they are damaged or the spring is weak, can give rise to a hung-up cartridge without the operator realizing it. A subsequent knock can result in a live round being chambered inadvertently. This situation is an accident waiting to happen. The lever-action rifle has been made famous by countless Western movies. The action is cycled by manipulation of the lever. The sequence of operation is essentially the same as the semi-automatic. Many lever-action rifles utilize applied pressure on the lever to disengage the safety device. Most have exposed hammers and tube magazines, so extra care needs to be taken. It is also difficult on some makes to check that the chamber is clear, and the breech block cannot be easily removed. So you have to be very careful. The other common action is the pump or slide action. In this case, the action is cycled by operation of a slide mechanism attached to the foreend. Again, care must be taken when inspecting the magazine and chamber. At this point, it is appropriate to mention air guns. Although they do not use a cartridge like a conventional firearm, they discharge a projectile with considerable power and accuracy. They are not toys. In all circumstances, they should be treated with the same respect as a conventional firearm. Now that we have an understanding of the way firearms work, let's make sure we know the handling basics before we venture into the field. A firearm is unloaded when there is no ammunition in the breech or magazine and the action is open. If it is removable, the magazine should be removed from the firearm. Once ammunition is either in the magazine or, in the case of break-action guns, in the chamber, but with the action open, the gun is loaded. Only load when you are in the shooting area. The gun is ready when a round is chambered, the action locked, and the safety catch applied. You should only go to the ready immediately prior to firing. Having learnt the rules, it is up to you and your companions to apply them whenever handling firearms. When you are planning to go hunting, remember all land is owned or controlled by someone. You must have the owner's permission to hunt over their property. When you are removing a firearm from a vehicle, remember rules 1 and 2. Treat every firearm as loaded and point it in a safe direction. Pick up the gun by the butt, not the barrel. Be muzzle conscious. Ensure the gun is unloaded and have your companion check as well. Always check the bore before using the gun. Use a rod and patch to remove excess oil. It is also a precaution against barrel obstruction. If you haven't already done so at a shooting range, check that your sights are correctly aligned. The process of sight adjustment is called zeroing, or shooting in. Only load your firearm when you are in your shooting area. Never rely solely on a safety catch. They are mechanical in their action and are therefore prone to wear, making them unreliable. Do not climb obstacles or fences with loaded firearms. Open the action and unload to avoid the chance of an accident. Either pass the firearm through the fence and then climb over, or if you are with others, pass your unloaded gun to a companion before you climb over. Identify your target and what is behind it.
Before you shoot,
never shoot when people, stock, or buildings are in your firing zone. When using shotguns, remember the spread of shot increases with range. Be particularly careful when shooting at moving targets. Shooting with spotlights or telescopic sights creates another problem by limiting your field of view. What's to the left or right? What's behind the target? Bullets travel further than the beam of a spotlight. Don't shoot at targets on the skyline. If you miss, there is nothing to stop the projectile from hitting something which you cannot see beyond the horizon. Always remember to consider what will happen if your shot should miss, and what will happen if your shot ricochets. Never shoot at hard surfaces or water. These tend to cause ricochets, and the direction is never predictable. Remember, sound can fool you. Shape can fool you. Color can fool you. Movement can fool you. Make sure you are aware of protected species and how to identify them. If open seasons apply, you need the appropriate permits, and you must observe start and end dates, as well as bag limits and other restrictions. Never have a loaded gun in the car, camp, or home. Remove the ammunition, and if possible, the bolt or breech block. Check the chamber and magazine, and have your companions do the same. This is both a precaution and a courtesy. Don't lean firearms against any object.
Oh, Louis.
You are tempting gravity and risking both an accident and damage to the firearm.
Because it could fall over.
Alcohol and firearms don't mix.
Can we have a beer?
Refuse to shoot with anyone who is drinking. And don't drink yourself until the firearms are safely stored. Leave that until all the firearms are safely locked away. Store ammunition and firearms separately under lock and key. This video on its own cannot give you more than a very basic knowledge of the firearm safety procedures. It cannot give you the necessary skill, understanding and experience in the safe handling of firearms. These are best gained from ongoing contact with other safer and experienced shooters. Be prepared to go on learning.